to welcome everyone who has dialed in today, or I guess linked in today, to the first of our what we hope to be continuing sessions that bring us together as textile manufacturers here in the state. I want to thank Max for volunteering to share this information. He actually sent me an email about it a while back, and we just thought it would be a great opportunity for kicking off this series. So I want to thank Max for volunteering to do this and taking his time to put together. I also want to introduce my sidekick today. This is my sidekick, Miguel Crisostomo Vargas. And Miguel is our RITIN's new social media guru, and he's also going to be taking care of the chat room today. So if you have a question for Max as he's making his presentation, and again, this is a very informal gathering, but if you have a question for Max, please just click on the chat at the bottom of your screen and just type in the question for Max. And Miguel will make sure that Max gets your questions and we respond to that. One piece of housekeeping I want to also pass along. We envision this as a forum for an information exchange between textile manufacturers. So there may be some service folks here, or vendors for services. This is not a forum for vendors to sell services, especially today. So just please keep that in mind as we go forward. So now let's Max, I'll let you kick things off. First question for Max is, and you've alluded to some of this in some of the information that you passed along, but how much have you saved using the federal R&D tax credit? And over the course of how many years have you actually been using those?
Yeah, and the last tax season, which was 2019, we got a tax credit of around $228,000. And over a 10-year period, we've probably been doing this for, I think, 7 or 8 years. But we have saved over $2 million over that period. And those are not income credits, they're actually tax credits. So they're dollar for dollar savings against your taxes that are due. And that's why it excited me, and I wanted to share it with the group because I was not aware of the R&D tax credits, and our accounting firm brought it to our attention probably about 8 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about. Like that. So you're basically, it was your accounting company that said, have you thought about these federal R&D tax credits?
Yeah, and what they did was they do not do R&D tax credits themselves. A number of accounting firms will subcontract that work out. They might say they're doing it, but you need to be a specialist in understanding manufacturing to really do the credits properly. And most accounting firms don't have manufacturing specialists. But our particular accounting firm, we use Citrin Cooperman, which used to be LGC&D before they were taken over by Citrin Cooperman. And they did not have an internal tax credit department, but they put us in touch with the Alliant firm, which is based out of Texas. And they worked with us directly, and there was no added upcharge by our CPA firm.
Now here in Rhode Island, we don't have a state R&D tax credit. Is that correct?
That's correct. Right now, and it's my understanding that there is no state R&D tax credit. These are all federal credits.
So what activities or investments qualify for these federal R&D tax credits, Max?
So I'll ask Miguel to bring up, there's a link that I provided in the chat, and I'll ask Miguel to share that, but I'll talk to it as Miguel is pulling it up. But basically, anything you are doing to improve processes at your facility or in creating new product, anything that is involved in those processes, those all qualify for R&D tax credits. So Miguel, right now, I think everybody should be able to see on the screen examples of manufacturing innovation eligible for R&D tax credit incentives include the following, and you folks can read through those And then the next section is production processes that might be eligible for the R&D tax credit incentives include the following. It's a very robust list. And we'll ask Michael if you could send this link out to everybody after the meeting so they can review it. But what we've been able to do in our company is on the lean journey. The lean operating principles. And so every program that we put in place to make an operation more efficient, all the time that is spent doing that qualifies for the R&D tax credit. It allows you to put a lot of programs in there. A lot of folks think it's just for innovating new products. It's not. It's products and processes.
Was there anything that stands out that surprised you that it would actually qualify?
I really thought I was surprised to hear that process improvements qualified because we work on process improvements every day of every week. And as long as we document it, and then we can advise what people were involved in the process, which I know that's a question that's going to come up in a minute, but we don't keep always detailed lists of everybody that is participating in either process improvements or innovation development events. So you can allocate a portion of your payroll on each of these individuals. So I would get my whole payroll and I would allocate what percentage of their pay goes toward process improvements and innovation, not their pay, their time. And then the Alliantgroup takes that information and they build out the actual dollars that were part of the savings. Because I knew it would have been very laborious for our people to document every time we did anything, who participated, the number of minutes or hours they participated. Some companies are very detailed and they can provide that. The Alliant can work with you to getting to that end number that is a supportable number based on what you've given, but it's kind of like a summary estimate, and they're comfortable going and putting it in the R&D tax credit.
So what doesn't qualify? Were there things that you thought might qualify that don't qualify, Max?
There's some, the examples that Alliant would give is that if you just change the aesthetics on something, like the color of a textile, that doesn't qualify. It has to be an improvement that's not just an aesthetic improvement. And like I said, it's robust and pretty liberal on what even if you fail at the process improvement, it doesn't matter. You're not getting paid on your successful execution of something. You're getting paid for trying it and spending the time to make improvements, whether they be innovation of product or innovation of process.
And does this service vendor you work for, do they give you guidance on, well, this is skirting the line, or this clearly qualifies?
Yeah, in the review that you do with them prior to your onboarding, these are questions that a company can bring up. But again, that list that's on the link, if you can tie your process or product development to any of those items that are in the link, they qualify. They're good to go.
Okay. And when I think of federal programs, I always think, my eyes roll and I think, oh my gosh, it's going to be a lot of paperwork involved here. Can you talk a little bit about that and your experience with the paperwork that's involved to make this happen?
Yeah, for us, the first time we did it, we didn't organize ourselves well in that it takes different departments of the company to put the information together. So you'll have your finance or accounting department working with HR, working with your product development people. You should have to build your list. And then on top of the list, you've got your people, your payroll, tax ID information. So even though we were not well organized the first time we kicked this off, it didn't take any individual more than probably 3 or 4 hours to get their piece of the work done. And so, but now that we've done it several times, we basically have a launch every year before we kick off putting our information together. So we get our team together and we make sure everybody knows what they're doing, because we've hired some new people that have never done it for us. So as far as our internal people, and so now we've got a whole SOP behind how to execute efficiently. But they'll tell you the comment that I got from Alliant on what's typical for most of their customers. And their answer to the question was, no, it doesn't take a lot of time. Our clients' documentation range from tracking every minute of every day to very limited record keeping. They will substantiate the credit from the information that is readily available, and their clients spend a dozen to a couple of dozen hours over 3 to 4 months. So it's like an hour or two a week on the project and you're done. My team probably gets it done in 2 weeks. And like I said, it doesn't take any individual more than 3 or 4 hours to complete their segment. Some of which is because we document through Kaizen events and Gemba walks, which is part of our lean terminology. We've got a lot of the events already teed up that we've accomplished or worked on. And then you just take those and you just have to populate them on, what were you trying to do and what was the end result? That's what you kind of have to add to each one of the events that you're using. But again, it didn't take a lot of time. And for the cost savings for reducing your tax liability, for us was substantial.
So it sounds as though the first year is you just kind of get your sea legs under you, figure out your process, and then it gets easier and easier as you go forward.
Yeah, it's just becoming familiar with the process. But in our first year, I think we saved $140,000, and I was like, that was worth it. So it was like, how long has this been available? And then I talked to some people in other industries, and other people were well aware of the R&D tax credit, and I just never was, and was never brought to my attention.
So do you at Brickle? I mean, obviously you're doing all this record keeping. Does Brickle, do folks at your company fill out the federal forms, or is that something that the vendor you use does for you?
Yeah, the vendor fills out all the work, and they literally will provide you with it's like a 50-page book of the R&D tax credit. So, my concern when I first got into this is what liability do these guys have if I get audited? I'm relying on them to do a tax credit. And well, number one, it is reviewed by our CPA firm so that they're comfortable with it. And they actually provide you with a detailed book that takes you through all the information that you provided and all the backup that is required by R&D. So, and if you do get audited, they come on board and they participate in answering all the audited questions. They don't leave you out there to do it yourself. And this particular firm has a good track record. I reached out to some other people in different groups that do R&D tax credits, because there's more than one. And for all the guests that are on the call today, you should ask your own CPA firm, do they do these credits? Or if they subcontract it out, then at least you can benchmark. And this meeting is more about making sure everybody knows about the tax credit. If they would like to use Alliant, we can put them in touch with them. If they want to do it on their own, that's great. It's a huge benefit to us, and I want to make sure anybody that's not aware of it, that they can start trying to utilize the credits that are available to them.
So what's the benefit of, you talked about your vendor, I think, as an aggregator of these kinds of programs. What's the benefit to that as opposed to a company just using their accountant? Is there any in terms of workflow or paperwork or effectiveness?
Well, they've got a whole team that is just focused on R&D tax credits. That's all they do. I think they provide. There's another credit that they're looking into to see if we qualify for it, but it's a payroll tax credit that came available in the CARES Act in 2018. That again, I wasn't aware of it, and they're checking into that now to see if I qualify. So they're a tax credit company that looks for any opportunities that you have, and again, they'll take a piece of the pie. I think they generally charge 25 to 30% of your tax credit, but if their expenses or the hours they put into it are less, it's the lesser of either the tax credit, 25 to 30% of tax credit, or it's their what they would call their billable hours. Whichever is less is what you get charged. And out of these meetings, if there are several people that really they've not utilized the tax credit, and their CPA firm really doesn't have a strong basis, or a subcontractor they use, and several people want to use Alliant, I would try to go back to Alliant and say, hey, there's 7 of us. Can we have a bulk discount rate because you're getting 7 people or 8 people as opposed to one-on-one? It would be like a buyer's group we put together. So that's an option. I don't think they'd be thrilled with that, but because they're going to make less. However, by bringing several people together and them not having to find a lead, I know as a company owner, I do it to get 8 good customers, or so that's open to the group as well. We can try to negotiate a bulk discount for RITIN members.
So Max, the revenue stream for the service provider, whether it be someone's accounting firm or a company like the one you work with, their revenue stream is a piece of the federal R&D tax credit that you're getting back, a certain percentage. And are you saying that can be negotiable, that fee?
Yeah, everything's negotiable. So they have a standard fee rate. It's just like the folks that use headhunters and temp services. They have a quoted rate, but you can always negotiate it, and it's probably based on the size and the opportunity to the vendor. And I don't see us as a huge customer, but our tax credit, as I said, this past year was in around $230,000, and that was so they out of that they took they probably took 50 or 60 grand or something like that out of the tax credit. But I was happy to pay them and achieve a net of $180,000 tax credit. And again, paying them is an expense, so it reduced my income as well.
Miguel, any questions in the chat room at this point?
Yes, so we have a question from Charles Havens. Internally, was there any division that was not eligible for the credits, maintenance, etc.?
No, all divisions, as long as the activity hit one of the guidelines on that list, that was the link that's going to be provided. So all departments, it didn't matter if it was internal office improvements or on the manufacturing floor.
Any other questions?
That's all for now, but if anyone has any questions, please feel free to send them in the chat.
And I'll share with you right now if I can.
Oh, we have another question, sorry. From Mark Manuel. Would updating a new ISO certification qualify?
That you'd have to ask them. We actually did a lot of ISO work, so we're going to have to ask that same question. We had to become ISO compliant with defense contracting on a number of new contracts that came out. And so we had a few people that spent a lot of time implementing the process. So I'm not sure if it qualifies because it's, again, I don't know if that's a process improvement or you're just onboarding a certification program.
Okay. From Jordan Cross. Can we circle back? What documentation is required? How specific do you have to be with documentation per R&D project?
Okay, so again, at the beginning when we talked about it, some people track every minute of every day. We do not do that. We will put down a summary of all the different process programs and process improvements we did, and we would allocate through our payroll the percentage that each of these individuals participated. Um, and then the other documentation that you'll need is tax returns, wage data, the W-2s with the wage data, and then any job tracking information, whether it's paper files, spreadsheets, or exported from your software onto a spreadsheet. You provide all that information to the tax credit company, and they will put it in a form that is acceptable to the IRS. And we haven't had to go back and change a lot of stuff. What they'll do is after you provide them with all the process improvements, they'll spend a couple of hours with you going through those items so they actually understand what the process improvement was. So if there's a red flag, they'll say, no, you got to throw that out. But in initial discussions with them, it's always good to get a really clear idea of what qualifies and what doesn't, because in the first year, we did put some process improvements that didn't qualify. And for the life of me, I just can't remember off the top of my head why they didn't. But they indicated that several of them didn't qualify. So then in the subsequent years, we didn't include the type of improvements they said they gave us a heads up did not qualify. So there was some wasted time year one. So when you decide to do this, if you do decide to, just get very clear up front an understanding of what does qualify and what doesn't. The list that is provided should help you out there. But you can give them some examples and they'll tell you right off, yes, that does and why, and it doesn't and why it doesn't. That's the type of information that you have to put together. And again, we provide that in about 2 weeks. And again, it's not a full-time job for these folks. I give my team 2 weeks to put together the information, and they tell me it takes them between 2 to 4 hours just to put it all together.
Miguel, any other questions at this point?
At this point, that is all.
Okay, well, Max, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was going to show them that this is a typical, I'm sharing it right now, I think. Can you all see that on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a typical document that they would send me via email, which is really the agenda to getting the whole project done. So we already started out with the introductory conference call that can happen in December or January. And then my next hit point is right here, which is due in the middle of March. Initial document requests fulfilled by Hyman Brickle and Son. And then they do the value assessment, which they'll tell you what your savings will be based on what we provided and any questions that come up. And then the next point here is 2020 R&D employee listings compiled and reviewed. So this is the hit list of everything you're going to get done. And for us, because we always get the extensions. So we really don't file till probably October. But folks that want to get theirs done by either April 15th or by the first filing, which I don't know if it's June or something, they might have to accelerate this, which is okay. But we know we're not doing our official filing till October of 2021 for the 2020 season. But again, the earlier we get it done, the quicker that my folks can start focusing on other stuff.
Thanks, Max. We're coming up on our 12:30 deadline, but I wanted to just take a moment to thank you again for this. And I wanted to share with the group that we will be sending out the link that Max has shown us today, as well as Max's contact information. If you want to have a one-on-one with Max, he's graciously agreed to exchange further information if you need it from him. So hope you enjoyed it today. And I want to thank again Max. I want to thank Miguel for his help. Also want to keep you informed about an upcoming session. We'll be getting an email about it, so you don't really have to write it down today. But on Wednesday, March 3rd at noontime, we're going to have a discussion about a training program that's currently available through We Make Rhode Island. It's a training program for industrial sewers, so that should also be relevant to a lot of folks' business. So.
Okay. And also, Michael, if folks are going to reach out and contact me, just put in the subject line, RITIN R&D tax credit, because some of the folks in the group I don't know firsthand of names, and they might not be familiar to me. So to ensure that I open up the email, because there's a lot of phishing emails that go on out there. If they just put RITIN R&D tax credit, I'll be sure to open up the email and provide any information that folks are looking for.
Thanks again to Max. Thanks to everyone else for joining us here today. We hope to see you at noontime on March 3rd.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a great week.